have a version of my past, a narrative of perspective that influences who I am in the present. If I have unresolved trauma, as an example, of course that's going to impact who I am, who I'm being. It's going to also shape my goals, right? And it's going to shape whether I'm nervous and anxious or whether I'm angry, right? And so how we frame our past absolutely shapes who we are in the present. And so my view, and again, I basically said that the past and future are tools. They're incredible tools if used effectively. They're not actual realities. So I can use the past powerfully to improve my present. I can also use the future powerfully to improve my present. That's what they're here for. It's like, that's why humans can be so intelligent. It's also why we can change and grow so fast. It's because I can take my past and really learn from it so that I actually am a different person from my former self.
Can we pause?
Yeah, please.
Can you give a real example of how somebody might do this today?
Yeah, 100%. So one, like the most basic reframe is gratitude, right? That's the most basic reframe. If I'm thinking about today, at the end of the day, I do this all the time with my kids. It's just like, how was your day? Not a great day, right? Or it was just okay. So that's how they've framed their experience of the day, right? That's how they've organized it. That's how they've categorized it. It's like, okay, one way of just reshaping the frame or reshaping the meaning of it, the definition of it, the meaning of it is just thinking about why was it a great day, right? That's just a new perspective. What was something you're grateful for? How did you see God in the day, right? These are just different ways of looking at the same thing. And so, that's basically what post-traumatic growth is based on, is just taking something that you initially perceived as negative and essentially taking something that, call it a liability. It's something that's costing you. It's something that's maybe ruining your life in the present and actually turning it into an asset.
Okay, love this because it's not serving you to look at, it's an okay day or it's a bad day. I'm going to give you an example. You tell me if I'm on the right track. I grew up with a really strict father and I had a really hard childhood with him and didn't feel worthy enough. However, I've done a lot of therapy and I have reframed it. My hard work ethic, the fact that I work till I get it done, that was from my dad. I learned hard work from that man. So I have reframed how he raised me and what that looked like because it has served me today and it will serve me in the future. Is that a good example?
I think that's a much more useful past than the other.
Yes.
Right? Again, it's a tool and it's going to impact who you are. And one of them is going to maybe lead to hopelessness or depression or anger, and one of them is going to lead to empowerment, right?
Okay.
And so, you want to get better and better at squeezing the juice out of it. That's a beautiful example. I'll give an example of a company I consult. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So this is an amazing company. They're doing 200 million in revenue. We're going to get them to $1 billion in 3 years. Again, one thing that's just funny about past and future as tools, their goal was to accomplish get to $1 billion in 10. But that as a future is so far away that it doesn't force urgency and the whole disruption ideas.
Yes.
It doesn't force enough on the present. You take the same goal and you make it 3 years, that starts to force a lot of things on the present, because these again are just tools for moving forward better in the present. And so one of the things, we just did a training. I went to Atlanta where they're based, trained their leadership team, and this was at the end of Q1 2024. So 25 days ago. And we have some impossible goals that we're going for. Even the bigger goal of the $1 billion, but then shaping that back, we've really clarified. One of the things that's really cool is when you have an impossible goal, massive future, what I say is that massive goal sets a really high floor. And the floor means you can't say yes to a lot of things because the goal is so high that most things won't get you there. Most strategy, you don't know how to do it. That's why it's impossible. But most of the things you're doing right now won't get you there. And so the floor is high on what you say yes and no to. And so we've set a really high floor for this company. Their leaders very adamant, we don't go below the floor anymore. We don't say yes to those types of clients, opportunities, and even certain team members got to go.
We say no.
Yeah. Difference between successful and really successful people is that really successful say no to almost everything. They have a really high floor and filter, same thing. But anyways, to the idea of properly categorizing the past, framing the past, because of our impossible goal and what we're trying to accomplish in 2024, Q1 has been about figuring out what's above that floor, the strategies above that. In 10x is easier than 2x. That language would be figuring out the 20%, right? Versus the 80%. The 80% would be below that floor that we've got to get rid of. But we want to find and figure out and then better execute on the few things that'll get us to the $1 billion.
Can you break down that 80-20 for the listener real quick?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to pass over that. That's
100%,
that is a huge benchmark in the book.
Yeah, and we'll go deep into it. But 80-20 principle, Pareto principle, very famous business idea that, and I use this idea loosely, but just that 80% or more of your success or your results is going to come from very few of things of what you do. They call it the essential few, which is what we'll call the 20%. You can think about this in terms of people, like 20% of your, 20% of the people in your life are creating 80% of your success, right? Or 80% of your happiness, and so it's finding and filtering for those few things that have the highest leverage and impact, and honestly, stripping out everything else.
How does one find that?
By having an impossible goal. Genuinely. You want a goal that's so high that because it's so high, almost everything you're doing right now won't work. So if and I love this because it gives a little more context, and then I'll kind of share how we used these ideas to help them properly frame their Q1, because they organized it in such a way that it was going to lead Q2 and the rest of the year for disaster. But the main idea here is that if you're going for a small goal, even a 2x goal, because the present and the future look so similar, honestly, 2x may feel big, but it's not that distinct.
Right.
It's not that different from who I am now. And honestly, it's taking the present and just creating more of it, just a little bit bigger. And so one of the core framework of 10x is easier than 2x is that if you go for 2x, you can keep 80% of what you're now doing.
Yes.
If you think about growing this podcast by 2x, or if I think about doubling my book sales or doubling revenue, I don't have to change that much.